Today we're going to have a look at colour and tone as the second part of our series on just exploring the colour and tones within our images and how they contribute to the narrative and to the aesthetics. Last week we looked specifically at saturation, luminosity and hue, which was about the individual subjects within our images. Whereas this week we're going to look at the overall colour cast, which is the overall colour of our image. And you can see in the two images that I've got here, the one on the left is what we typically get when we shoot where there's tungsten lights. Whereas the one on the right is what we actually see. And we're always surprised when we get the image back and go, oh, it's very yellow. And so today we're going to find out why and how we can fix it. And we're going to explore white balance. And white balance is the concept that our eye automatically has a white balance adjuster in it, and it sees what's on the right. It sees white as white, whereas our camera doesn't know about that, and we have to actually tell the camera what colour light is actually landing. So just depending on the different circumstances, we don't even have to think about artificial light. The light that we get as natural light from the sun actually changes colour throughout the day. And this one on the left here is a shot that I took last Sunday night at the Q intersection of the old Postmaster Hotel. And you can see the building, which is red brick with sort of cream trim, has ended up almost bright orange, and that's because it was taken just before sunset, and that's what we call golden hour. And in golden hour the light is very yellow, and it will make the subject quite yellow, and we can actually see that when we look at it. It makes it glow yellow. The image on the right was taken on a very moody, foggy early morning, and you can see the colour cast here is really quite blue. That boat was in fact white. The mountain up the top has a completely different set of light on it because it's above the clouds and is not getting these blue tones associated with its colour. Sometimes the colour cast that the light gives you is really aesthetically beautiful, and that's why you've taken the shot. And so colour cast in your photographs is not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes it ends up with quite odd photographs. So the colour of what we photograph is specifically based on the types of lights that are actually colouring the image that we're currently photographing. This one on the left is out of camera, and you can see there's all different sorts of coloured lights. This is what we call mixed lighting, and it's coming from the tungsten lights inside the building. There were some fluorescent lights there as well, which are quite green, and there was natural sunlight. Now, I love the result of that. That mixed lighting has given the image a really surreal feel with all those different colours. But sometimes we don't want that, and particularly if you under artificial lights, you get some really weird effects. So the tungsten lights, as we've discussed, will make objects yellow. Fluorescent lights, if you're in perhaps a shop that's got fluorescent lights, or in a city office building, people's skin will look green, which is not a good look. Light on a shady day often will turn subjects blue, and so all the whites in the images are blue, and people's skin will end up with a weird blue colour as well. And the golden light of dawn and sunset will give everything an orange glow, which is aesthetically beautiful because we can actually see that. Our eye can see that sunset colour, and we find it really nice. But sometimes it's a bit strong and we have to back it off a bit. So our eyes and brain make automatic adjustments for white balance, and they recognise what skin colour should look like, what a white should look like, and automatically adjust this, which is fairly extraordinary, really. Our camera, on the other hand, very faithfully documents what it's currently seeing. And that's why we get back and we get these photographs. We think, this is what it looked like. I remember that had fabulous colours in it, and now it all looks orange. So the way that we address that is by setting the white balance within our camera. We tell our camera that, look, you're currently under fluorescent lighting. So therefore, you need to adjust your own perception of what colour is to realise that you're looking at green light and make the adjustment accordingly. So what the camera does is recognise what's pure white in the image and then makes the adjustment of what the colour temperature of that photograph should actually be, to make white have no colour, to make white actually pure white. So we've got a few things going on here, what we actually see and what the camera actually sees, and then telling the camera, no, I don't want you to see my skin being green under fluorescent light. I want you to see it being a natural colour. And so you set the white balance in your camera to fluorescent, and then you get the correct colour for your whites, etc. And you can see here, these are the sorts of photographs that I used to get when I didn't know about white balance. And people's skin was really weird. And we know it's weird because we have this intrinsic in our brain. We see skin colour all the time. And so we know what it should look like. And so what I want to get you to understand is that sometimes colour cast actually makes something really interesting, and other times it makes our photographs look odd. And people say, I don't like the fact I've got green in my skin. These are the colours of the different light sources that we can get, and the cast that it will actually give your photograph. So you can see with a clear blue sky or shade that you will get blues, so that all of the whites will have this really faint blue tinge to them. As we get towards the afternoon light, it turns to be much more golden and yellow, and that beautiful low afternoon light with that golden light often makes things just look amazing. So if you're going to take gardens where there's lots of green foliage and different coloured greens, that late afternoon light is the best time to take them, because the light is actually yellow and the plants then will reflect that back into your photograph, and you get all the subtleties of shades of those different coloured greens. Then when we move into sunset, we get a much redder light, and some of our artificial lighting, like candlelight, tends to be more red. So you have to be aware that that will actually overlay like cellophane. What your camera sees will be this colour of the light that's actually landing on your subject. I don't know whether many of you have ever investigated the white balance within your camera. I tend to leave mine on daylight because that covers most circumstances that I'm photographing, and it even the colour of flash is very similar to daylight. So because of that, if I actually put the flash on the camera, it doesn't change the colour cast in my photographs that much. So I recommend that you don't use auto white balance, and a couple of reasons. One is that it often gets it wrong. And when it does get it wrong, and you have to manually change it in your post-editing, it makes it very hard to sync your photographs for the correct colour, because the auto white balance will vary between photographs depending on how much mixed lighting and where you're pointing the camera. So I tend to avoid auto white balance, and I've been told that by numerous professional photographers that they avoid it as well. And you know, I was always taught in my college days to always put it on daylight. So that's what I do. unless it's specific. So if I know I'm under tungsten lighting, but usually when I'm doing internal shots, I'm using my flash anyway, and I'm relying on my flash to actually give me the light. So you just need to think how pervasive the current ambient light is. If you're under solely fluorescent lights, heaven's sake, put it on fluorescent, because green skin never makes anybody look any good. So this is the sort of thing that I'm talking about, where I saw the church as it was on the right, with those beautiful blues and yellows and all those gorgeous complementary colours. And when I looked at my photograph that night, I saw the one on the left. And that was because I had my white balance set to daylight. But it was easy enough for me to just change it in post. And once I did change it in post, I could then just, because I changed it by a set amount versus what it was actually captured at a set amount, white balance, I could then just synchronize all the photos I had in the church to be that new amount, because my original values weren't varied, they were a set value. So this is your white balance. It'll be abbreviated to WB often, or they call it white balance. Sometimes they call it color balance. And you just use the temperature sliders and the tint sliders to get it right. So in this case, it was just the color temperature. I rarely change tint, and if I do it by eye. But the temperature in this case was in fact much bluer. So I took the yellow out to make it go back to the colors it originally was. I highly recommend you shoot in RAW, and that's if you're able to. I know cameras only, I think some of the modern cameras do, phones do shoot in RAW, but most phones shoot in JPEG, and it makes it very hard to get your color balance right later, because the color is actually compressed into the compressed image. JPEG images are compressed. What it does when it saves the image, it takes all of the colors and all of the information that it collected and squishes it in to what you have as a JPEG image, which is quite a small image. RAW images, on the other hand, collect everything it sees and saves it as a raw image, and raw images often can be anything up to 20 times the size of a JPEG image, just because it's got all that information in there. And because it's got the information in there, they're completely adjustable to get the color of the skin and the whites in the image correct. And it's quite important if you've got mixed colored lighting. I remember when I first started photography, people said, oh gosh, you never want to have mixed lighting. It's an absolute nightmare. What do they mean by mixed lighting? And it was when you perhaps you're using flash, you've got sunlight coming in the window, but you've got overhead tungsten lights. Now, our eyes don't see that. Our eyes just see a room that's been well lit. Whereas the camera, it goes, oh, I've got some yellow light there, I've got some blue light there, I've got brighter blue light there, I've got bounced light, it's a yellow wooden floor, and I've got bounced yellow light coming off that, and you just have great difficulty capturing skin color to look correct. So you need to be able to adjust it later. Again, sometimes the camera sees and collects your color cast completely differently to what you saw. I saw what's on the right there, which was amazing colors. The building was salmon pink and the sky was navy. It was just about to have a storm. And the color of the water was cyan. It was absolutely beautiful. And then I got the photo back, or looked at it on my laptop, and it had that cyan color cast to it. So I'm just going to show you what you end up having to do. Now, I've used Lightroom as an example here of having a color picker in it that can actually sample to get the white balance automatically correct. I know you use different software, so I'm just giving you the example of what can be done, and you'll have to work out within your editing software what you can do. Now, this color picker is here as this little eyedropper, and so the eyedropper is fairly standard across all editing software as a means of sampling color. And so what you do is you click on it and pick it up and drag and drop it to the part of the image that is either white or neutral gray. And neutral gray is just the color of a school uniform, you know, it's just got no color in it whatsoever. It's just a neutral gray. And because it's got no color in it whatsoever, the software knows there's no color here. And the software knows with something that's pure white, it's got all the colors in it in equal amounts. So in this case, I knew the boats were pure white, so I just sampled the boats. And what the software then does automatically is once you click on that and sample it, you then end up with it automatically customizing the white balance to make the white white. So it's just taken the information there and said there's way too much cyan and blue in here. I'm going to adjust the color balance automatically for you to make the white boats white. So originally the temperature was 5,200 and the tint was +5, and it's changed the tint to +18 and 5,300. So that's a very quick way to fix the white balance within your image. And then if you've taken a whole series, you can then just sync the whole series to that. And so in this image, I actually used a grey card. I was taking this photograph of the family in a room that has yellow American oak walls. And I know if I take photographs in this room that I get everyone has a color cast of yellow in their face, because if I'm using sunlight or even flash, it bounces off these walls and gives everybody this really orangey colored skin. So I have to use what we call a grey card. Now, you can buy these grey cards on the web. It's just a piece of grey cardboard. You'll find though, and someone told me this is a great hint, that inside of camera bags is neutral grey. So open up the camera bag, if there's grey inside it, it's neutral grey. So you can just put your camera bag here. Instead of having someone hold the grey card, you can just put a camera bag next to somebody, or even go and get a paint sample that's close to neutral grey, and then just have that in your camera bag. I've always got a grey card with me so that I can get the colour balance right when I've got mixed lighting. In this case, I had sunlight coming in via the windows, I was using flash, and I had the colour cast of the walls. So I knew I was going to end up with a weird coloured skin. And so by having it, I take a test shot, and then in the editing software, I sample that neutral grey, and it resets my color balance for me. So the original temperature shot was 5,300 with a tint of +4, but when I sampled it, it shifted it to 5,500 with a tint of +12. And so that then allowed me to get the correct colors in their skin, so it wasn't really yellow. And then if you do use Lightroom, you can highlight the image that you've corrected and then other images and select to synchronize based on white balance. And you can synchronize all those images to get exactly the right colored light across them all. You don't have to individually do that. So in summarizing what we've been talking about, light falling on the subject changes the appearance of that subject's color within the camera. Our brains don't see it, but the camera sees it, and that's why we end up sometimes with quite artistic photos, but sometimes with ones that we just go, the color's wrong. Cameras, we can set the white balance if we remember, But sometimes with mixed lighting, it's pretty hard to go, no, in that room where I was photographing that family, do I set it for the color that's coming in via the windows? Do I set it for something like tungsten lighting, because that's what the yellow coming off the walls looks like? Or do I set it for the flash? What one do I set it for? So it's easier to adjust it in post and make sure that you've got either something pure white in the photograph or a grey card. So just for ease of use, I set all my white, always have my white balance set to daylight unless I have specific lighting that I want to adjust for, like fluorescent lighting, or if I've purely got tungsten lighting, I will adjust for that. The daylight setting, it looks like a little sun. If you have a camera that shoots RAW, always shoot RAW, because when you're doing your color corrections later, all of the information is in there and it will get it right. If you're shooting with JPEG, it's only got a limited amount of information that it can correct. If you have got access to software that has an eyedropper tool, get it to make the judgment for you. Sometimes I find it will make a judgment, but it's still a bit blue or it's still a bit yellow, and then I just tweak that. And if it's really important you get your skin color right, then make sure that you have a grey card. The other thing is the same with brides' dresses and things like that. If I'm shooting something that absolutely needs to be pure white, then I'll make sure I have a grey card, shoot the grey card, and then for that particular lighting setup, I know that I can get it completely correct. The other situation is when I was shooting SES offices. It was a new building for the SES, and I shot that, and that day I didn't take a grey card. I was relying a lot on the fact that I was shooting purely flash, and there was some sunlight coming in, and I didn't, and there was quite a bit of orange in the room because the SES is always very orange. The designers put a lot of orange in the decor. And they came back to me and they said, that is not the SES Pantone color for orange in your photographs. So I had to make sure that I color adjusted every single photo to make sure that I got their branding color in my photographs. So that's another reason I now never go out without my grey card and always take the shot, particularly when it's something that's branded and has to have their Pantone color. So that ends our talk about color cast, how to try and avoid it in the first place, and how to fix it if you can. Thank you.